Marcus Reed's fight for survival, when justice is not for the weak. Marcus Reed never thought his life could hit rock bottom until he held the foreclosure letter in his hand. It wasn't just a house. It was the home his mother had built, the place where memories of family dinners, unfulfilled dreams, warm moments he thought would last forever. But now the bank claimed his mother owed a second mortgage, a loan she never mentioned. And if he didn't pay, they would take it all away. Marcus couldn't believe his eyes. He stared at the signature at the bottom of the loan agreement, a sinking feeling running down his spine. This couldn't be his mother's. Someone had forged it. But when Marcus sought help, he was met with cold rejection. His lawyer said the case was too complicated. The bank didn't bother to explain. The local authorities didn't even care. He was just a small man facing a powerful system. But Marcus didn't give up. He turned the pages, studied the law himself, dug into files that no one else had bothered to review. And then, amid the dry words, he discovered the chilling truth. The bank hadn't just defrauded his mother. They had done the same thing to hundreds, even thousands of others. This wasn't just a scam. This was an elaborate scheme, hidden by the most powerful people in the financial industry. Marcus decided to take the case to court. But as he did, the power behind the bank began to strike back. His bank accounts were frozen. His girlfriend's job was threatened. One night, he came home to find the door broken open. In the middle of the cluttered room, a simple piece of paper lay on the table. Stop before it's too late. That was the moment Marcus realized he wasn't just fighting to keep his house. He was fighting for those who had been robbed of their voice, those who had been crushed by the system. And if he didn't fight, he would be erased. But no one could have imagined that an ordinary man like Marcus Reed could turn the tables. In the midst of the tense trial, he presented evidence that no one could deny. An internal video recording a secret conversation between the conspirators. The courtroom fell into deadly silence as the bank manager's voice rang out on the screen. If we continue the legal process, it will take years to foreclose. We need a faster way. A forged contract will solve this. That was the moment that changed everything. Marcus didn't just get his house back. He brought down a financial behemoth. Once untouchable executives are now facing justice. Families who lost their homes are now getting what's rightfully theirs. Marcus Reed's story is more than a lawsuit. It's a reminder that justice isn't for the weak. It's for those who aren't afraid to fight. And if you believe in stories of injustice, of the underdog standing up to the powerful, subscribe to Black Footprints. Because this isn't just a story. This is real. This is our fight. Marcus Reed never thought his life could get this bad until he received the foreclosure letter. This house was more than just four walls and a roof over his head. It was the home his mother, Evelyn Reed, had built for her entire life, a place filled with memories of dinners together, stories whispered in the dark, and dreams that never came true. When she died a year ago, Marcus thought he would at least have a place to go. But now the letter in his hand was a death sentence. The bank claimed he owed a second mortgage, one his mother had never mentioned. Marcus couldn't believe his eyes. He flipped through the documents, his hand shaking as he saw the signature at the bottom. Something was wrong. It looked too stiff, lacking the soft curves his mother had always had. A tingle ran down his spine. This couldn't be her signature. Someone had forged it. Unable to sit still, Marcus called the bank. After a frustrating wait, he finally got through to an agent, a cold, monotone voice on the other end. "Excuse me, Mr. Reed. This mortgage is valid. If you have any complaints, please mail them in." "No, there's something wrong here. I've never seen this document, and my mother's signature. We're under no obligation to explain further." Click. Marcus clenched the phone in his hand, his blood boiling with anger. They didn't care. They saw him as just another number in 100 other foreclosures, an anonymous person in a system that had no room for compassion. He needed a lawyer, but money was tight, and when he called law offices, the answer was always the same. "This is too complicated. We don't take cases against banks. Sorry, but we can't help you." The back door slammed shut in his face. Not giving up, Marcus went to the city council, hoping someone could show him a way. But they only gave him blank stares, formulaic answers. "We're sorry for your situation, but there's nothing we can do. He walked out of the government building with heavy feet, bitterness in his heart. The system wasn't made for people like him. If no one was on his side, he would fight it himself. Marcus went home, shut the door, and sat down in the middle of the living room, surrounded by scattered files. He wasn't a lawyer. He didn't even know where to start. But if he wanted to keep this house, he had no choice. He would study the law himself. He would find out the truth. And if anyone was trying to cheat him, they would regret choosing the wrong opponent. Marcus Reed never thought he would spend hours in a law library, reading dry lines about foreclosure law. But this was the only battle he could fight, and he refused to lose. Under the yellow light, he took notes, his eyes glued to the computer screen. The complex legal language made his head ache, but amid the tangled paragraphs, he found something remarkable, a loophole. The bank had broken procedure. A mortgage document had to be authenticated by a third party and properly notarized. But the document his mother had left behind had some irregularities. Not only did the signature appear to be forged, but the notary seal seemed invalid. Marcus sprang into action. He drafted a motion to the court, asking for a stay of the foreclosure until a full investigation could be conducted. It was the first ray of hope in the darkness. But then, after just 2 days, the court's response left him devastated. The petition was denied. No explanation, no way out. The system seemed to have decided that he had no chance. But fate had not entirely turned its back on him. One afternoon, in the midst of Marcus's despair, his phone rang. "You're Marcus Reed, right? I am Linda Carter." The woman's voice was sharp but sympathetic. "I've been in banking for almost 20 years. I've seen what you're up against. And I think you're right. That mortgage is invalid." Marcus was stunned. It was the first time anyone had believed him. Linda asked him to meet the next day, carrying a thick file. Among the pages was an internal report from the bank, which noted suspicious transactions involving fake mortgages. There was a list of affected accounts, and his mother's name was right there. But Linda wasn't his only ally. A week later, Marcus went to Denise Fowler, the notary listed on the mortgage. At first, she denied it. But when Marcus presented the evidence, her face paled. "I don't know about this. I didn't notarize the document. I just remember someone at the bank giving it to me to sign without checking it." Denise shuddered. "If this gets out, I'll lose my license to practice." Marcus understood her concern, but he also knew he needed the testimony. At the same time, the case came to the attention of the Justice Collective, a legal organization that helps people oppressed by large corporations. One of their lawyers promised to look into his case. Marcus felt like he had some hope until the bank struck back. His bank accounts were frozen without warning. His credit cards were disabled. They used suspicious activity to keep him from accessing his own money. And it didn't stop there. He walked out the door one morning to find his car towed away. He wasn't the only one attacked. Linda was fired immediately. Denise received a warning from a notary public that her license might be revoked. The bank didn't just want to win, they wanted to crush him. And to do that, they hired Bryce Lambert, one of the best lawyers in the business. Lambert was rumored to have never lost a case. He was the kind of guy who didn't care about ethics or justice. He only cared about winning. When Marcus got the news that Lambert would be representing the bank, a chill ran down his spine. This was no longer a battle between one man and an institution. This was David and Goliath. And Marcus knew, if he didn't find a way to beat them, he would lose everything. Marcus no longer felt safe even in his own home. That night, when he returned to his rented apartment, the door was ajar. A feeling of unease rushed into his chest. He walked slowly inside, his hand clutching the key in his pocket, as if it could be used as a weapon if needed. The room was eerily messy. Drawers had been pulled out, papers strewn across the floor. The laptop was still in its place, and his wallet was intact. This was no ordinary burglary. On the table, a piece of paper was neatly placed, scrawled with a threatening message. "Stop before it's too late." Marcus felt his blood run cold. There was no doubt that he had touched something much bigger than himself, and the people behind it were not afraid to use the dirtiest means to silence him. But what he didn't expect was that the danger wasn't just aimed at him. It was aimed at the people he loved. The next morning, Marcus's girlfriend, Olivia, walked into the coffee shop where they'd met. her face pale. "Marcus, something's wrong." She put her phone down on the table, the screen still displaying an email from her company's HR department. "Your company is under investigation for shady financial practices. Are you involved with Marcus Reed? Do you understand what this means?" Olivia whispered, her voice filled with concern. "If they continue, you could lose your house, but I could lose my job." Marcus felt a surge of anger. They weren't just trying to intimidate him. They were ready to drag Olivia into it. But that wasn't all. 2 days later, Olivia received a summons from the police. They wanted her to come in to assist in the investigation. But as soon as she entered the interrogation room, she realized this was more than just a conversation. A policeman leaned forward, his voice low and cold. "Are you sure you want to stick with Marcus? What he's doing could get a lot of people into trouble. If you cooperate with us, we can save you from unwanted consequences." A veiled threat. As Olivia told him this, Marcus looked at her, his eyes full of pain. He knew she was at a dangerous crossroads. One path that would cost her everything, and another that would keep her safe but would turn her back on him. "I can't let them do this to you," he said, his voice choked. Olivia took his hand, squeezing it tightly. "We'll get through this together." She had chosen to stand by him. But the price of that choice could be high. As things spiraled out of control, Marcus discovered a much bigger secret. He wasn't the only one being scammed. From the documents Linda had given him, Marcus found dozens, no, hundreds, of forged mortgage documents. All bore the hallmarks of the same pattern of fraud: fake signatures, invalid notary seals, and loans approved without the homeowner's knowledge. But who was behind it? Marcus dug deeper, and the truth shocked him. A major real estate conglomerate had colluded with banks to rig the market. They were forging mortgages, foreclosing on homes that couldn't be fought back, then selling them off at bargain prices to their own subsidiaries. And even some judges were involved. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. This was no longer a personal battle. This was a financial scandal that could shake the entire system. He had entered a battle from which he could not turn back. And now, not only was his life at stake, but everyone who stood by him could be next. The first trial began in a tense atmosphere. Marcus entered the courtroom in his old suit, but his head was held high. This was more than a legal battle. This was a fight for his life. Bryce Lambert, his opponent, sat across the room, completely calm. The man with the $1,000 suit and the smug demeanor was no pushover. But Marcus was prepared. When he was given the chance to speak, he stepped up to the witness stand, his voice firm. "There's something wrong with this document." He held up a copy of the mortgage document, magnifying the forged signature on the large screen in the courtroom. "This is not my mother's signature." The room fell silent. Marcus continued. "The signature on this document does not match any legal document my mother has ever signed. The bank forged this signature to take my house." The judge's eyes turned coldly toward Lambert. "Mr. Lambert, what evidence does the bank have to refute this charge?" Lambert, though experienced, could not hide his embarrassment. He stood up, shuffled the documents in front of him, and then spoke. "Your Honor, this mortgage document has been duly notarized." The judge interrupted. "I would like to see the original." Lambert tried to argue, but could not produce the original document. Finally, the judge issued a temporary ruling. The bank has 7 days to provide the original mortgage document. Otherwise, this foreclosure will be stayed. Marcus clenched his fists. This was a small victory, but an important step forward. But he did not expect that the bank had dirtier cards to play. The bank counterattacked. 2 days after the trial, Marcus was arrested by the police in front of his house. The arrest warrant read, "Forgery." He was pushed into a police car, the flashing lights of the street mocking him. His mind went blank. This was a trap. Someone had forged the papers, and he was now a criminal in the eyes of the law. At the police station, he was interrogated for hours. But he was not alone. The Justice Collective had stepped in. A lawyer from the organization had helped him get bail, but at a high price. "They're trying to push you into a corner, Marcus." Marcus gritted his teeth. He knew he was up against a corrupt system, but he hadn't expected them to go this far. To top it off, the bank immediately filed a motion to dismiss the case, citing Marcus's ongoing investigation for forgery. If the court granted it, they could speed up the foreclosure process and he would lose everything before he had a chance to prove the truth. The legal battle had barely begun, but Marcus could see clearly. This was no longer about the law. This was a fight for survival. The traitor in the shadows. But the hardest blow came from where he least expected it. One night, while Marcus was working in his apartment, he heard a strange clanking sound. He walked into his office and saw a dark figure rummaging through his files. The figure turned, and Marcus froze. It was Daniel Harper, one of the members of the Justice Collective. "Daniel, what are you doing?" Marcus asked, his voice low. Daniel didn't answer right away. A flash of tension flashed in his eyes, but he forced himself to calm down. "I was just checking the files." But Marcus wasn't fooled. He glanced down at the table and saw a small USB stick in Daniel's hand, containing all the important documents about the case. "You work for them, right?" A moment of silence stretched on for what seemed like an eternity. Then Daniel sighed, a twisted smile on his face. "I just did what I had to do to survive, Marcus. You don't understand. They're stronger than you think." Marcus felt anger flare up inside him. "So you're a spy for the bank?" Daniel looked at him, his eyes devoid of remorse. "It's not just the bank. There's more to it than you think. You should stop before it's too late." Marcus clenched his fists, but instead of hitting, he took a step back. "Get out of my house. Now." Daniel hesitated for a moment, but then he shrugged and left, leaving Marcus standing in the middle of the messy room, his mind reeling. He had thought he had a group of trusted allies. But now, even his small circle of allies had betrayed him. He couldn't trust anyone anymore. This battle had just become a lot more dangerous. The decisive evidence. Internal video. Just when things seemed to have hit rock bottom, Linda Carter emerged with a ray of hope. She approached Marcus late at night, her eyes strained but also filled with determination. "I have something." Linda opened her laptop and clicked on a video file. The screen flickered. A luxurious conference room appeared, where a group of men in expensive suits sat around a table. In the middle was Darren Klein, the bank CEO, the man behind it all. "We can't wait forever." His voice rang out, calm but cold. "If we continue the legal process, it will take years to seize these homes. We need to be more aggressive." Another man spoke up. "You mean forged signatures?" Darren Klein leaned back in his chair, smiling faintly. "I'm just saying that if the legal documents come out in time, we can speed up the process." There was a silence. Then another voice said, "And if someone finds out?" Darren smirked. "We have a legal team to take care of that. No one can win against us." Marcus stared at the screen. This was it. This was what could end them. He looked up at Linda, his voice dry. "Where did you get it?" Linda sighed. "A former colleague sent it to me. He hated what the bank was doing, but was too afraid to reveal his identity." Marcus clenched his fists. "We have to take this to court." Linda nodded. "But be careful. When they find out you have this, they'll do everything they can to stop you from showing it." Marcus knew, but this time he wouldn't back down. The final trial, turning the tables around. The courtroom was packed. The whole city had heard about this case, about an unemployed social worker taking on one of the most powerful banks in America. Bryce Lambert sat across the table, still looking confident, but there was tension beneath his perfect mask. The judge walked in. Everyone stood, then sat. The trial began. Marcus stood. "Your Honor, I have new evidence." He plugged the USB into the courthouse computer. The big screen lit up. The video began to play. The room froze as Darren Klein's voice rang out. Forged signatures expedited the process. All eyes turned to Bryce Lambert. The famous lawyer was speechless. Lambert stood, trying to keep his composure. This video may have been doctored, but Marcus shot back immediately. "Your Honor can verify its source. It's an internal recording taken directly from the bank server." The judge stared at Lambert. "Do you have anything to say, Mr. Lambert?" The lawyer swallowed. For the first time in the entire case, he had nothing to say. A heavy silence filled the room. Then the judge spoke. "In light of this overwhelming evidence, I hereby order the forfeiture of Marcus Reed to be vacated. In addition, I order a formal investigation into bank fraud." The gavel struck. The trial was over. Marcus closed his eyes, took a deep breath. He had won. Across the courtroom, Lambert bowed his head, knowing that his career might just be over. And Darren Klein? He would not get away with this. Marcus stood up and headed for the door. As he walked through the crowd, he heard the murmurs of amazement, the awe of those who had thought he could not win. He had fought a giant, and he had defeated it. In the days following the trial, the media exploded with news of the mortgage fraud scandal. Bank forged signatures to seize homes was front-page news of major newspapers. Darren Klein, the bank's director, tried to avoid responsibility but could not escape the pressure from public opinion. When the official investigation was opened, the evidence against him was too clear. He had no choice but to resign, and soon after, the FBI got involved. Klein was rumored to have hired a team of top lawyers to defend him, but when many former employees of the bank began to speak out, he could no longer cover up the truth. One day, Klein was escorted out of his office on the evening news. Marcus sat in front of the TV, staring at the screen. He had waited too long for this moment. But Klein was not the only one who fell apart. Bryce Lambert, the crooked lawyer, was suspended by the Bar Association for breach of professional ethics. His past cases were being re-examined, and his former clients were now wondering if they had been betrayed. And the real estate company behind the fraud? They were facing a series of class action lawsuits from people who had lost their homes. Shareholders were fleeing, and the stock price was plummeting. A financial empire that had once been untouchable now collapsed before Marcus's eyes. A week after his victory, Marcus received a tempting offer. A man in a dark suit appeared at his apartment door. No identification, no business card, just a shiny leather briefcase placed in front of Marcus. "A small offer from the bank," he said calmly. Marcus opened the briefcase. Inside was a check. 6 figures. "Consider this a settlement," the man continued. "Just sign this and promise to keep quiet." Marcus stared at the check, then looked up at him. "So you think you can buy me?" The man shrugged. "Everyone has a price, Marcus. I'm just helping you find yours." Marcus chuckled, then slowly closed the briefcase and pushed it back. "I don't need your money. I need justice." The man sighed, as if he had expected this answer. He stood up, gathered his briefcase, and walked toward the door. Before he left, he turned back, his eyes cold. "You know, Marcus, turning down an offer like this might not be the wisest decision." Marcus didn't answer. He just watched him walk away and slam the door. Less than 24 hours later, Marcus contacted the New York Times. He didn't just want his home back. He wanted to expose the whole truth. He provided all the documents, videos, and testimony he had. "They try to silence me, but I won't be silent." His story went viral. Television picked up the story, activists began speaking out, and people who had been defrauded by banks found the courage to stand up. A wave of anti-banking protests erupted on social media, and under enormous public pressure, the government announced it would tighten regulations on financial institutions. One evening, Marcus stood on the balcony of his small apartment, looking down at the street. Hundreds of people were holding signs, chanting slogans demanding justice. He didn't just want his home back. He had started a larger fight, a fight for justice that no one could stop. As Marcus's story spread, it became more than just a personal case. It became a symbol. Major news outlets like CNN, the New York Times, and the Washington Post covered the scandal. Thousands of people shared his story on social media, and something magical happened. Other victims began to speak out. From small towns in the Midwest to bustling neighborhoods in New York, hundreds of people lost their homes to similar scams. They shared documents, turned over mortgage records, and gradually, a full picture of a rotten financial system emerged for the public to see. The government could not ignore it. The Justice Department launched a nationwide investigation. Bank executives were subpoenaed. Some hastily resigned, others were arrested. The hearings were televised, and people across the country watched every moment. Then something unthinkable happened. Families who had been illegally foreclosed on began to get their properties back. Marcus stood in the crowd as a family received their keys from the local government. They cried, they hugged, and they knew that this fight had changed their lives. From the ruins of the scandal, a new movement emerged. A bill was proposed. The Mortgage Loan Protection Act, which would tighten regulations on banks, require absolute transparency in mortgage contracts, and ensure that no one could lose their home because of a forged signature. Marcus Reed, an unemployed social worker, became a symbol of justice. He was no longer just fighting for himself. He was helping other families who had been pushed aside by the system. He appeared at conferences, met with lawmakers, spoke to people who had been as desperate as he had been. He became a voice for the voiceless. And then, one day, as Marcus walked down the street where he had feared he would lose everything, a stranger ran up to him and shook his hand firmly. "Thank you, Marcus. You didn't just get your home back. You gave us all hope back." Marcus smiled. The fight wasn't easy, but it was worth it, because for the first time in a long time, justice had won. The autumn wind blew gently through the trees as Marcus climbed the old steps of the house. His mother's house. He touched the wooden door, remembering his childhood. The smell of the apple pie his mother used to bake every Sunday morning, the laughter echoing in the kitchen, the time she hugged him tight when he fell. Everything was different now. She was no longer here, but somehow he felt she was still watching over him, still proud of him. Marcus stepped inside, taking a deep breath. The afternoon light filtered through the windows, bathing the room in a warm yellow. Each family photo on the wall seemed to tell the story of his life. From the innocent boy he was to the man who had taken down a giant financial conglomerate. The house had finally been saved, but he knew the war was not over. Marcus stood on the steps, looking down at the street that once made him feel small, but now he felt different. He opened his phone and turned on video. This message wasn't just for those who knew him. It was for anyone who had ever felt powerless against an unjust system. "I'm not a special person. I'm not a lawyer. I have no power. I have no money. I'm just a regular guy, but I fought and I won. Justice doesn't happen. It's not something people hand out to you. It's something you have to fight for." He paused, looking directly into the camera. The powerful want us to believe that we can't do anything, that we're too small to fight them. But I stand here today to tell you, that's a lie. When we stand up, when we refuse to accept injustice, when we unite, no corrupt system can continue to prevail. Marcus turns off the camera. He is no longer a victim. He is a change maker. And the best part? He is just a human being, just like the rest of us.